similar to the entertainment thing. I think it's more genuinely about, like, if it sounds cool, if it sounds good, then that's approved in one way or another. That's a candidate, and so the only limitation is sort of if it doesn't sound cool to anybody. But I guess, that's how everybody works.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you had a killer weekend. I most certainly did. This Vox and Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and I am very stoked to have teamed up with them to bring you Heavy Montreal Presents Vox and Hops Brutal Montreal 2022, which is happening on September 2nd at Corona Theatre. This year's event features Deicide performing their classic album Legion in its entirety, along with Cataclysm, who will be performing their classic album Serenity and Fire in its entirety, and we have Inhuman Condition that is opening up the gig. Tickets are flying for this show. Honestly, if you want to come to the gig and hang out with me, because I'm going to be there and enjoy life, metal, and craft beer alongside me at Brutal Montreal, you better pick up your tickets soon. I've put the link in the description of this podcast. Don't wait. Trust me, you're going to regret it. It's going to be a killer time, and I cannot wait. I am so stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love for you to take a few minutes to write a review for the podcast. Now, why would I want you to do that? Well, you have to imagine that when someone is looking for a new podcast to listen to, what do? They scroll down, they look at those reviews, and if those reviews say that the podcast is amazing, and then I ask great questions, and that all my guests are super cool, well, they're most probably going to give that podcast a chance. So by you taking a few minutes to write a review for the podcast, you may actually be the person that helps sway someone's decision to become a brand new Vox and Hops head, and that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today on the podcast, I'm joined by Jostein Austvik of TrollFest. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops, episode number 353.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I am with Jostein Austvik of TrollFest, better known as Trollmannen. Jostein, how are you doing?
I am doing pretty good.
It's very, very nice to catch up with you. Let's start off with the shittiest question I'm going to ask you. Every other question after this one's going to be far more fun. How have you been coping with the glorious years of 2020, 2021, and hopefully not the rest of 2022? How have you been dealing with these amazing years?
Well, sort of similar to most people, I guess. There's been, a lot of time at home. Some shitty stuff, but also some cool stuff. But we actually ended up doing, because you were supposed to have a small social bubble, and we pretty much we did that. Our social bubble was the band.
Amazing.
So so we spent a lot of those years practicing and recording for the new album, and playing a lot. So that was a very nice thing to do.
That is a nice thing to do, and not many bands have done that. So I've spoken to a lot of bands, and no band has told me that they made their bubble, their band, so that they could be together and to create and to write. That's a creative way to approach these strange things that we were dealt with. Very, very cool. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. What beer do you have on your side today that we're going to be sharing today, Jostein?
I have a very fine IPA that a friend of mine has made. Actually.
Really? Okay. What's your friend's name, and what's the brewery called?
It's not really. It's just him in his basement with his passion.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, cheers to your friend. Give him a shout out. What's his name?
My friend is Joachim.
Very cool. Well, cheers to Joachim. for making you a killer IPA homebrew. On my side, I'm recording this episode. I am in town in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This is the first remote Vox and Hops interview that I've done in a hotel, as opposed to sitting at my kitchen table where I record all of these things. Last night I was at Sookram's Brewing Company. This is their Cult Classic. It's a Pilsner. They got really cool branding on it. Green with like circles and lines. Really very cool. Shout out to Andrew, the head brewer and owner of Sookram's. We had a good time last night. And then Manitoba Metal Fest. We're playing tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to crack this, and I would love to hear about your very first beer. Do you remember the first beer that you drank?
Yes, I think I do. It was, I was too young to drink it. So me and two of my friends way back in the day, we got a friend of ours who knew someone who was old enough to buy us some easy to drink beer. If I remember correctly, it was called Premium, but it was, a very sort of light Pilsner kind of beer.
Those early first beers, so formative and memorable, and I remember just not liking beer at first, and it was more of like a utilitarian thing. I had to get it down so that I could have the party.
Absolutely. Same for me. Like it took some time before I started really enjoying beer. In that sense, it's also kind of funny how you sort of it seems to be a tendency to the more beer you drink, the sort of stronger and darker you sometimes end up going.
It's like metal. At first time I heard Cryptopsy, it was too much for me. I didn't understand it. And here I am now, listening to the most extreme stuff possible. This Cult Classic from Sookram's pours out really nice golden veil on it here, really gorgeous. Super crisp, dry, sweet little fresh bread sort of vibes going on. Really, really killer. Massive cheers to Sookram. I'd love to hear about the soundtrack of your youth when you were growing up in your parents' or guardians' house. What music was playing when you were not in control of the radio? What music did your parents or guardians listen to?
I consider myself quite blessed in that sense, because my dad would usually put on the music, and he loved all kinds of 70s rock and roll and metal music. So there would be Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin sometimes, but a lot of Uriah Heep, and Pink Floyd was also very much a soundtrack to my childhood. I remember usually when we would go on car vacation, drive somewhere for a really long ass drive, my dad would usually put on some Pink Floyd albums.
Amazing. What would be the band that you brought into the house that your father appreciated? Did you ever turn your father onto a band as opposed to him showing you stuff?
Yeah. I think I've done that not too many times, actually. He's more a fan of simpler rock and roll. So, I can't remember if it was me who showed him, but he really likes Rammstein. The last thing I remember showing him that he really enjoyed was Gojira.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I think maybe the first band might have been AC/DC, but I'm not sure if he knew them or not before I started listening to them.
That's interesting. AC/DC. That I wasn't expecting that one. I would thought your dad was already on the AC/DC train. I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure, but I cannot remember him having any AC/DC records in his collection. But he certainly must have known about them. I don't know. But yeah, I AC/DC was the first band I fell in love with. So it might also have been a case of me ruining it for him for several years, and then only now has he started listening to it again.
So AC/DC was your band. When I had John on, it was all about Metallica. Am I right with that?
Yeah.
So that's the classic foundation of TrollFest right there. I like that. Do you remember the first show that you went to go see?
I think like the first a proper metal show I went to, I think that must have been Einherjar, actually. If you know them.
I do not know. What kind of band is that?
It's a Norwegian, Viking metal band. It's one of the, like, they started in the early 90s, and they're from the same region as me and Mr. Seidel.
Were they like an inspiration? Like you went to that show and it seemed reasonable that one day you could be performing there as well?
Nah, maybe not. I was not listening. I was a huge fan of Einherjar, but it was sort of by the time I started really going for music, I guess I was listening to a whole bunch of other stuff before that and after that. But they've probably well, you know, any sort of impression you take in is probably an inspiration in one way or another. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Do you remember the venue that the show was at?
Yes, I do. But it's one of those venues that disappeared not too long after that. So not only does it not exist anymore, but I think also the building that it happened in might have been torn down.
I'm lucky that I did this. One of my first big shows that I went to go see, I ended up playing that venue. And I remember playing the show there and being like, this is so cool that I'm playing the same venue that I first saw my first show. So I don't know if you got the chance to do that before they tore it down or changed it.
No, not there. But I have had that feeling many a time. It's well, I kind of feel it. I feel a little bit of it every time I go on a stage that I haven't been on before. But you know, particularly if it's something that has an emotional connection, like you know, somewhere you've seen other big bands, and all kinds of other sort of special events.
Is there one I like for me? Like Red Rocks would be like a bucket list that I'd love to play. I don't know. Cryptops is probably too extreme to do a show at Red Rocks there, but is there a venue? Is there a place? Is there a festival that you haven't done that you still want to do?
Oh yeah, there are a few actually. But yeah, Red Rocks being one of them. Well, actually, any festival in the US would be fun. We've only done.
You came to Heavy Montreal. I know that.
Yeah. There's been a couple of small ones, but Ozfest would be sort of. I remember. I remember that stuff blowing my mind that actually happened. Obviously, that only happened in the US, but I remember buying the Live at Ozfest '97 CD or something like that, and it blew my mind because it had almost all my favorite bands at the time doing the same festival. So cool. That would have been cool, and Woodstock would have been awesome just for the name. And there's a festival in Denmark called the Roskilde Festival, which I used to go to when I was young quite a lot. And we've never played there, so that would be really cool too.
Another one for me would be Roadburn. Just so cool, so eclectically curated. Do you remember your first time on stage? No, not really. But I think I started playing in a brass band. I started playing drums in a brass band in second or third grade in school. So
you do the sort of show and tell shows.
Talent shows. Yeah.
Something like that is probably one of the first time. But I also did a couple of years with the kids theater group.
Okay.
Then I sort of I stuck with the music and drumming,
It's amazing how Norway, Sweden, I talked to a lot of artists, and the arts, the appreciation of the arts, teaching art to children at a young age, and the amount of amazing bands that have come from it it's like you got to invest in your future, right? Basically. So I would like the US and Canada to do a little bit more of that. Invest in your future musicians, invest in your future actors, put some money into the arts, please, because who knows if you weren't playing those shows or doing those acting things, if you would have ended up, being a Trollmannen from TrollFest.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I've definitely benefited from it.
Starting on the drums, you start on the drums, transferred over to vocals. What was it about the drums that drew you in? And then at what point of your life did you realize, that you needed to do something different?
Well, it's... I still actively play the drums.
Oh,
actually.
Amazing.
So I haven't stopped that, and it was sort of accidental that I started singing in TrollFest. But basically, my vocal career.
Happy accidents. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I basically started singing when we started TrollFest, and then it's sort of from that point on, it's just sort of been developing by practicing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I imagine you learned how to sing in school too, because there's the whole choir stuff. It was a part.
There was. I did vocal lessons for about a year when I studied music. So I did have, a small foundation, or the outline of a foundation to start building on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How easy was that, and deciding to become a vocalist? It's different. It's very different than being a drummer. Drummers, you're hidden in the back. A vocalist, you're the front man. You have to be there. You must have had it in you because of the acting classes. But it takes a certain personality to be a front man. Were you ready for that when you took on the job?
I'm not sure if I'm the right judge of that. But I think I was, let's say, ready enough. But I do also sort of, how should you put it? I identify more as a drummer than as a singer.
Really? Okay, interesting. Is that why Mr. Seedles has such a big personality on stage?
Very possibly.
Do you think maybe the TrollFest needed someone to compensate for the frontmanship? Maybe not that. I'm not saying that you're not a good frontman. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just curious. Yeah.
I used to do a little bit more jumping around and the regular old frontman shtick.
Yeah.
But then after we started incorporating a little bit more percussion and stuff like that, I sort of have to stand in the same position, just because usually when I'm not singing, I'm drumming something.
Amazing. Yes, exactly. So you never got away from the drums. That's super interesting. As much as I love it, and incorporating it, your part of your personality, into the band even more as the band progressed. It's interesting.
Well, we're sort of just having fun and doing what brings us joy in a sense.
Bringing joy. I love that. Delivering joy to the masses, the angry metalheads. Which is why you have a killer new album called Flamingo Overlord. It came out May 27th via Napalm Records. Talk to me about this record, something that came about because you were in a bubble with your band during a pandemic. You probably wouldn't have released an album so quickly, I imagine. You probably would have been busy touring. Talk to me about Flamingo Overlord, some surprises, something that excites you about it. What's the most exciting thing about this album for you?
I guess there are several things, but we're really happy about releasing probably our most experimental record to date. It's it's been a lot of fun making the album, and actually it's a lot of the record was written before the pandemic started.
Okay.
So most of the pandemic was used to sort of hone the expression and the output.
Just refining everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that a fun moment? Like, you're basically what happened, I imagine, is that you guys dive into each composition with like a fine-tooth comb and then try to make it as best as it can be. Is that a fun experience, or do you guys fight?
Well, there's discussions, of course. But usually we manage to deal with it in an adult, responsible way, I should say.
I completely agree. It comes with maturity. It's so different than being in a band when you're 16 and you're like, I love my riff. It's my riff. It's like it's the song.
Absolutely, and definitely. It can be grueling too to have your ideas flayed and quartered and turn into something that you perhaps don't even think is an improvement.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard, eh? And then you have to swallow it.
Yeah.
Because it's a group decision, and then that song becomes the hit, right? That's the most frustrating part. But yeah, maturity. It's very important for anyone listening, any young band listening, any young musician. The best thing for the song is what's best for the song, and then you should definitely leave your egos at the door when someone is changing a note, a melody, a riff, a drum beat. It's for the good of the song. Then and you can write more songs. So
absolutely.
Something that I remark, and I'm sort of getting associated with now myself. TrollFest is the party band. You guys come, you spread joy, you bring a party to every city that you play. Your videos are funny, and you guys are partying again. Is it ever exhausting? Is there a moment where you show up at a venue and you just don't feel like being the party guy and you have to turn it on? Is that something that happens?
Yeah, of course. There are mornings you wake up regretting every decision you made the day before. But a lot of the time, it's sort of you drink some water, or maybe just start drinking beer again, depending on where you want to go. But you sort of push. You can push through it, and at least for me, by the time I hit the stage, the adrenaline starts pumping, and then you get the energy from the crowd, and it usually turns your frown upside down.
Is it hard to keep partying? At the point, the older we get, do you feel like sometimes you let people's expectations of you down, that you're not as insane really as they think you are?
Oh, I am sure that's happened. but I'm not really too worried about it, just because it's in a sense we are in the entertainment industry.
Exactly.
And it's primarily it's, well, maybe not primarily, but a large part of the whole thing is entertainment. And I feel we are silly enough to make that implication very obvious.
At what point was that a decision really to make it a show more? Like Rammstein, right from the beginning, they were like, we're going to have fire everywhere. You guys bring a party. I know that John had told me that he was in a death metal band, a black metal band before that. He wore corpse paint, and he does that, and here he's still wearing makeup, but different makeup now. At what point in TrollFest did you guys realize that, because the songs are good, at what point did you realize that we can make this even better if we put on this type of show? Was it right from the beginning? Was it a conceptual decision, or was it something that evolved throughout the years, through late night drinking sessions, probably?
Well, I think it was, if not from the very, very beginning, it definitely quickly became a part. Like, I remember for our first tours, I used to have a beer bottle costume on. And that thing has sort of been growing ever since then.
Is there an idea that's been too much? Have you guys had an idea and then it was just too much? It was silly. It was too out of the box, too extreme that you
No. The only limitation we've ever faced is budget.
Yeah. So I was talking to Chris Bowman of Ailstorm about the monstrous duck that they throw into the crowd, and we had a big discussion about ordering these goddamn ducks and how expensive it was, and the complications of keeping this duck not popped, and so I put that in the same boat as you guys, as what is too extreme, what is too much, what is for the sake of the concert, Yeah, interesting.
I don't know. I guess it's usually like, if it makes you laugh, or if it makes more than one person laugh, then it's probably a good idea.
I love it.
If it makes a lot of people laugh, then it's probably a winner.
You mentioned a lot of more experimenting on Flamingo Overlord. To talk to me about that, with Cryptopsy, it's so we know Cryptopsy has a sound. There's an umbrella boundary of what Cryptopsy is, and we can experiment only so much within that range. With TrollFest, is it more free? Can you guys experiment to a point where, is there a limitation when you're writing stuff for TrollFest? Is basically the question. No, not really. Similar to the entertainment thing, I think it's more genuinely about, if it sounds cool, if it sounds good, then that's approved in one way or another. That's a candidate. So the only limitation is sort of if it doesn't sound cool to anybody. But I guess that's how everybody works. But they're not gonna have a collab with have a rapper come on a TrollFest song. Is that too? Is there anything that's too extreme basically for a TrollFest? It has to fit.
No, there's a rap section on one of our new singles.
There you go. See, there you go. I didn't even know that. So. Whose idea was that? And how was it received? When the initial pitch came up, let's have a rapper. Was it a member rapping, or did you bring on a guest guy?
No, we brought on a guest rapper, and it was Trollbank, our drummer, who or our previous drummer. He now plays bouzouki, but he's still writing a lot of songs for us, and he wrote the song 20 20 miles an hour in the wrong lane. And yeah, he was really sort of keen on like, I want to have a rapper for the midsection.
Interesting.
And then we ended up trying out a couple before we found the guy that we felt delivered what we wanted.
The best flow. Was it like
yeah.
When you're trying out people, it's like the rhythm, obviously, but it's also like the timbre of their voice has to fit properly too.
Yeah, absolutely. The how do you should say, like the delivery of the thing. We sort of wanted a little bit of that cocky kind of party rapper,
I love it. I didn't know that. That's so cool. So there is nothing that's too much for TrollFest. I like that.
Yeah, no.
I'm very lucky that I have the podcast throughout the pandemic. I didn't get to play many shows. I am playing a show tomorrow, though. And
awesome.
There's something that happens before I go on stage. I get like goosebumps. I get this adrenaline rush, this crazy feeling that I missed a lot. But I'm lucky that I have the podcast because right before I sit down to do these episodes, these interviews, I get that same feeling. It's how I've been filling the void of performing. So how have you been filling the void of performing live throughout the pandemic?
Oh, it's a good question. One of the things I did that I really enjoyed was I found a video that someone in the crowd at one of our shows filmed.
Really?
And he's filmed the entire show, but he's only filming the stage and us for the first maybe the first 2 minutes or the first song or something, and then he just turns around and he films the crowd. Yeah,
amazing.
And I remember finding that video and just sitting around on the couch mid-pandemic probably, and just almost getting that feeling of having performed after watching it, because
oh, that's so cool.
I got to see the crowd and their response again, and it was really, really it was so nice and a little bit emotional. So that was one of the ways I managed. And also, I'm lucky enough, me and my wife live about half an hour outside the city, so we have a house.
Amazing.
So I have a small studio in my basement here. So I got to spend a lot of time making music and just recording stuff, tons of stuff, and trying out all kinds of different, studio experiment.
That's interesting. Is any of that material? And I imagine when you write stuff, it's not just for TrollFest. You write just to create whatever's coming out of you at the moment. Do you ever imagine that coming out on an album of its own, something that's different than TrollFest?
Maybe at some point. But I do have a bit of a tendency to make everything 90% finished.
So you need to bring in another person to help wrap things up.
Possibly, yes.
That's funny.
Or just someone to whip me into doing the last 10%.
Napalm, you got a whole other album here. Just sign him for a solo thing, and there you go. Come on, Napalm. You'll thank me when you get there, but
maybe.
I love making beer collabs. I've released probably 40 of them in the past year. I just love it. I love creating something with my logo on it, whether it be for Cryptopsy, for VOX&HOPS. I just love it. I've made teas, I've made coffees. I love it. If you could make a collab, and I don't remember if I asked John this question. I probably did, but I don't remember. Is there a TrollFest beer? Oh, there was at a show, at a release show. That now I remember. It was a monstrous stout, right? Was there was something weird in it, if I remember now?
Yeah. It was made with I think it's instead of yeast, they used something called kveik.
The Norwegian yeast. Yeah, gives it a more wild flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. Fruitier, sort of. Yeah, it was glorious beer.
If you could make another one, just you. You sound like a beer nerd. I like it. What would be the perfect beer for you?
Oh, I don't know. Many.
All of them.
No, but really, I do genuinely enjoy different types of beer at different times.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so if it's really hot and sunny and you're sitting outside and you're sort of drinking as much to cool off and chill out as you are for the flavor, then I prefer Budweiser or Bud Light or something really, light and thirst quenching, or how you say it. And in that kind of a setting, I probably wouldn't enjoy a Guinness.
No.
But when you're sitting at home, you're nice and toasty and warm, and the weather outside is a little bit shitty or something, then definitely, a Guinness might be perfect. Yeah, I enjoy all kinds of different types of beer.
I love it. Bringing joy to metal fans. It's so different. I love talking to bands like you that in your genre, where you bring the party, you bring happiness. It's completely opposite than death metal. They're death metal. We want to go there and punish people. And I think I asked John this question. What is your experience of that? Of deciding to be the happy band?
I can't really remember sort of making a decision.
It's just what came out of you guys.
It's sort of what came out, I guess. Yeah,
it's amazing.
But then again, I have always had a penchant or a love for a kind of comedy and music in one sense, like
Spinal Tap.
Well, not necessarily Spinal Tap, but maybe more like Frank Zappa or Devin Townsend.
Yeah.
I remember the first song I actively remember loving and just nerding out about is the song Hocus Pocus by the band Focus, if you know those guys.
Oh yeah, I love that song.
Yeah, with the yodeling and the
everything,
flute and
everything.
All of that crazy shit. Yeah, I love the shit out of that.
Crazy vocals. So
yeah,
good.
Absolutely insane. Yeah.
Love that song. Really. Yeah. Cheers to Shome 97.7 in Montreal for playing that when I was a kid and me discovering that song. One last question. It probably does happen to you, and you mentioned that it did happen to you, so you're the perfect candidate for this question. Classic wrap-up question. Here we go. What is your hangover cure? You sort of mentioned it before. You drink water, or you start drinking, depending on what you got going on that day. But do you have any other secrets to curing the hangover that people could discover from you?
No, I don't really have any out of the ordinary. I have a whole bunch of like shitty tips that don't work.
That's the more that I'm doing these, the more I'm discovering that they don't. No, it's because we're getting old. It doesn't work. We suffer is what we do.
Yeah, it's the only cure. Just suffer. Sleep, actually.
If you can, yeah.
Yeah, sleeping is probably the best cure for a hangover. If you could just, stay in a bed and just sleep, then at one point it will be over.
Jostein, thank you so much for hanging out with me, talking about your life, talking about music, talking about beer. I had a blast. I hope you did as well. Everyone get ready.
Absolutely, man.
Go check out Flamingo Overlord. Came out May 27th. Napalm Records. It's a banger. You're going to love it. Jostein, thank you so much. This is great. Cheers.
Thank you very, very much as well. And have a good show tomorrow.
Hey, Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this was an awesome conversation. I love hanging out with party bands. I think it's so interesting. The fact that they always have to be on, I always end up asking questions about that. And the fact that it's an entertainment aspect of it, that they have that in their mindset is very, very interesting to me. I think that to bring a party in each city that you go must be very, very difficult to party at the same level, at least act like you're partying at the same level every night. So massive cheers to Jostein for pulling it off and being one of the best party bands out there. TrollFest, so much fun. If you want to go to and have a party at a metal show, trust me, TrollFest is what you want to do. Check out that new record. It's a banger of an album, and I know you're going to love it. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, you should sign up to the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast mailing list. You can get it on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive 2 emails a month that will contain all of the details of everything that's been happening in the world of the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast. You'll get to see which episodes I dropped recently, which episodes I have coming up. You'll get to see which albums the VOX&HOPS album review crew have reviewed recently. You'll get to see which albums Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself, has added to the Brutal Awakenings playlist. And you will get the people that will hear about any of the projects that I have in the works first before I announce them to the public. There's just so much going on in the world of the VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast. I hate for you to miss a single thing, so sign up to the mailing list. The VOX&HOPS Metal Podcast is brought to you by Soundtail Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I have one more episode coming up this Friday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, VOX&HOPS heads.